like to remind everyone of some of the instructions included in the remote meeting protocol. Everyone will be muted, and if you ask to speak, unmute yourself, speak, unmute yourself again when you finish. If you have a question, press the virtual hand screen and the chair will invite you to speak. One person at a time. Please do not begin speaking until the chair invites you in. If you have a comment to make, you should raise the symbol of the hand when the chair asks for comments again, and you will invite to speak one person at a time. Any reason a member has cause to leave the meeting, they must indicate this to the chair before leaving. Please raise your hand or send a message to the online chat. In case law is clear, you are not allowed to vote if you haven't heard the full debate. So if your screen freezes, you have to use the whole debate. You may have to use it in discretion over to vote. However, if you did not use the whole debate, you cannot vote. When you come to the recommendations, you're invited to vote. At the time the meeting will start, please could I ask all officers and guests to turn off the cameras so that the elected members and the lay persons are on screen. You should turn off your camera and microphone while you're speaking on later, but please turn them back again afterwards. Please also automatic services mute everyone and begin the recording that was referred to the published agenda. Good afternoon, welcome to Merthyr Tydfil Borough Council. Please note this meeting is recorded and may be broadcasted via the authority's internet. Images, sound recording will also be used for training purposes within the authority. Right then, we'll go back to the agenda. Everybody happy with that? Apologies for absent is Ian Thomas. Declare whips A and B. Now, before I go back to item 3, can I say we turn off the mute? I will have a minute silence for former Ellen Thomas. She was a councillor for Binlow area, and also she was a family member for social services for a few years. So could I turn off the mute for a minute and we go back on, please? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, everybody? No. Oh.
Yeah, we can hear you, Bill, fine.
All right, fine. So we go back on the agenda item 3. I'll report social services complaints, representation complaints for 2018-2019. I know the dates is a long time, but Gaynor, you take this through it, or Lisa, are you kicking it off?
I am happy to kick it off, Bill, and then Gaynor can take over. Gaynor is the author of the report, so obviously she would know the detail and will talk you through it. I appreciate this is probably quite late in the day, but due to the situation we've been in this year, then there's been a delay in some of the scrutiny reports. So this should have come I think April time based on last year's complaint and compliments. And if you remember, Bill, I think you and I met with Gaynor to look at what sort of report scrutiny wanted. So I think we have tried to make it more balanced this year with compliments and complaints. It's going to improve as time goes on, because obviously Gaynor's now looking at this rather than previous officers, and obviously Gaynor's got a better understanding about what comes into the department, both positive and negative. So I'll hand over to Gaynor now to take you through the report and then answer any questions if need be.
Okay, Liz.
Okay. Hello. You have to bear with me. I haven't done this before, so I think you got a copy of the. Everybody got a copy of the report?
Yeah, all good reports.
Brilliant. Okay. Obviously, we are required by the Social Services Complaint Procedures of Wales to produce an annual report on both our complaints that come in and our compliments as well. And we're looking at highlighting our key points within the report as well. As Lisa mentioned, myself, I met with Lisa and Councillor Bill Smith at the beginning of this year in order to discuss what councillors were looking at from the report. So unfortunately, because I hadn't changed how my data was captured for this actual financial year, looking forward into the future reports, they are going to be far more informative and also looking at trends within sort of certain areas and departments as well. So it'll give you far more information than unfortunately perhaps previous reports have given, maybe a bit sort of just a little bit sort of an oversight. So if do you want me to just read through it, is there the report?
Well, just give us the basic and then I'll open up for questions from members.
Brilliant. Okay. For 18-19, we received 98 complaints, 45 adult services, 53 children's. Out of those 98 reports, only 2 went to stage 2. So if anybody, I can go through basically like a quick outline. The complaints process is stage 1 would be that we would have a manager to have a look at the complaint and investigate it. We put a lot of work into the stage 1 with the hope that the resolution will be met and we wouldn't be need to escalate it to stage 2. With stage 2, it would be that we would appoint an independent investigator and also an independent person if the complaint is within the children's services. And obviously that would be, as a cost to the local authority because we commission the report, so we pay for the report then. So what we find in stage 1, so if I go through like stage 1, it's usually that a complainant will come either verbally, there are many ways to submit a complaint, verbally, written, email, and then we will I'll document down and make and agree with the complainant what their concerns are, and importantly as well is their desired outcome. And then from that, then I would have a discussion with the manager. What we look at is stage 1, and before we went into lockdown, we would hold meetings in the one-stop shop with the manager and the complainant in the hope that we can reach a resolution. We find I find these meetings have been very productive and certainly reduced the amount of complaints that have gone to stage 2. But since we've been in lockdown, we've been doing these via teleconference. So we've still been holding the meetings for the complainants, but holding them obviously via telephone instead. So that still carries on to date. So that's the stats at the moment. But if I go through a little bit, if I go through the report here, obviously our aim is to limit the amount of stage 1 complaints that do go to stage 2. Only from the point from the complainant, it can be quite emotional. It's if they've got to meet up with an independent investigator, a lot of complainants don't find that very comfortable. So we find if we put a lot of work into the stage 1, then it stops that going through. So that would be at local resolution rather than formal consideration. I've put on the report our framework for how we document the complaints down, so the categories that we actually put them in. But this was quite archaic data really, and this is something that we used to do, but we've changed that now moving forward for 1920. And although I still use this framework, we drill it down far more. So rather than looking at perhaps care management or quality of service, we look at what are we looking that sorry what are we looking at further down than that, whether if it is if it is communication, what is the communication issues that we're having? So unfortunately, although it might not reflect in this annual report, I'm hoping that, you know, it would certainly will in the next report as well. So that's what the data does tell us, though, is at the moment where the complaints are as far as the services, either adults or children's. Again, moving forward, because this wasn't highlighted to me until sort of like summer of 19, and then myself and Councillor Smith had a meeting with Lisa in January, we haven't drilled down from the departments more. So I know this is probably going to be quite frustrating because it hasn't got the detailed information that you were looking for. From a positive point, we had 0 complaints with regards to acknowledging our complaints. So any complaints that come into the complaints department, either myself or my colleague Sarah acknowledge them. And then we manage the communication until the complaint response has been sent out, in order that we keep those within the statutory timescales that we've got. So that makes sure that the managers will get the response back to us. We usually draft the response, the final draft then, and with the management's with the management's response is send them out. So as you can see, we had 96, where this says where the data tells us, we had 96 recorded complaints for stage 1. And there is a slight increase on that since 17-18. The reason that there's probably an increase as well is that we are making the complaints process as visible as possible, because I feel it is important that we do use the proper process in order to address the complaints, in order that should any complaints be escalated to the Ombudsman, we can evidence that we have exhausted the local authority's complaints process. If a complaint comes in and it hasn't gone through our process, then what the Ombudsman will advise us to do then is to take it back through the informal and formal process, process of the complaints process again. So we try and make it as visual as possible and as available as possible in order that we can take any concerns down. We also document, we don't document them formally, but we also take sort of case management issues where maybe it's just a telephone call, but we don't record them as formal complaints then. They're more of a case management issue. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the complaints regulation and guidance says that there is an expectation for us to offer a face-to-face meeting, and I am pleased to advise that both adult service and children's services managers are very engaging with these meetings and more than happy to involve themselves in order to try and address the concerns, and a lot of the concerns do get addressed within these meetings and don't progress any further. So that's the stage 1. The stage 2 being more complex. We only had stage 2 complaints for 18-19. The total cost for the 2 complaints for the independent investigators total £4,164. Then we had one in adults, one in children's. So that was the costing for the 2. At the moment for 2021. We haven't had any stage 2s, but we have held a lot of meetings. So we don't look at it from a cost point of view. You know, we make sure that a complainant is supported and is and feels that they can, without any detriment to themselves, are allowed to make a complaint. And I make it quite clear that I'm impartial. Although I work under the umbrella of the local authority, I don't actually work for any particular. So I try and express to the complainants that I'm up on the fence. So should they wish to make a complaint, there's not going to be any biased comments from the complaints department. So there was 2 stage 2s, one for adult services and one for children's services, and neither of those complaints progressed then onto the Ombudsman, which would be the next point for a complainant should they remain dissatisfied with us. Okay, so that was for the complaints policy. So If you go on to a continuous improvement, you can see that I've mentioned that it was identified in the scrutiny meeting on the 12th of March 2019 that there was a requirement for more detailed information. Unfortunately, this was too late for the 1819 report. But again, I'd like to reassure you that moving on, that there will be more of a sort of top level details that you'll be able to sort of identify more so where the complaints are being, where the complaints are. Now, I've got here a summary of what the complaints have been about for 1819. Around a lot of them around communication and missed calls. And although we're unable to provide a full breakdown of the service that we've received the highest number of complaints, I am able to say that these 3 service areas received the most complaints, and that's intake, children looked after team, and family support team. Although the staff's there's not a lot of difference between the children's and adults complaints, we do receive more initial concerns within children's services, but that's the nature of I think of the departments that are there. So that's probably why we would have more complaints in there. And like I said, sometimes a lot of them are about communication. They're expecting a phone call back and they're not getting it. But we've been in discussions with children's services on how we can look to address that. And one of the discussions myself and Taryn have had is whether we create an email address for each of the departments in order that the telephone calls that people, because I've had conversations with complainants where they say, I don't understand, I've rung the department 30 times today and they haven't rung me back, but that's not realistic. So we've got to look at it somehow on how those people can, how the complainants can make that communication without it having such an impact on the departments as well. And what I find with the complaints email address that we've got is that myself and my colleague Sarah manage that. And should I be absent or not in work, then my colleague Sarah picks up on them, which results in then there being 0 complaints for being outside our timescales for acknowledging. The complexity, although there's been a very limited amount of stage 2 complaints, I don't think we can take away the time that is spent on the complaints. And I do applaud the managers, because they, I'm probably the one person they never want to speak to in the local authority, but they're always so positive, always so supportive. And I know it puts a huge demand on their departments as well. We currently have nobody on the vexatious register. We did have one in 1718, but we don't have anybody at the moment. So I think, again, that's a reflection on the time that we spend on trying to manage the complainants individually. Obviously, some complainants will demand more time than others, but we try and manage that as much as possible to take the pressure away from the departments as well. So if I go on to complaint outcomes, so firstly, table 3, we had out of the 44 stage 1 complaints, 6 were upheld, 12 were partial, 25 not upheld, and 1 withdrawn. With a partial, that means that it's a bit of both usually. So we put them in there because they are sort of partly upheld. There might be an element of that complaint that actually was upheld, but overall it's not upheld. And then for stage 2 in adults, there was 1 complaint that wasn't upheld. Table 4 then, over the page, the children's services complaints. We had a total of 52 stage 1s, 7 were upheld, 12 partial, 29 not upheld, and 4 inconclusive withdrawn, which means that the complainant has withdrawn the complaint themselves, and 1 stage 2 that wasn't upheld either. Okay, if I take over the page. On the other side of complaints, we also look at compliments, which I feel is imperative, you know, that we feed, that the staff feed these back that they received, not just for their morale, but we can see then and record what we are actually doing right, rather than just constantly looking at things that are going wrong. So we've put an example in there of a number of compliments that we've had in, and we'll continue to record those as well, and feed it back. Each compliment that I received in, the Lisa Curtis Jones haven't been CC'd in, we forwarded on, so they do have a copy of those compliments as well, and make sure that the staff, you know, the staff member is recognised for the good work that's been doing, and that's I think is imperative for their morale. Even if complaints are not upheld, we still look at what we call lessons learned. So we might not have upheld the complaint, but it doesn't mean that we can't learn something from there. So I think that this goes back to a common thread is communication. It seems to be the core of a lot of the complaints that we have. And I think perhaps further discussions about providing this email address and providing this for each of the departments might provide then a sort of lifeline for complainants, parents and guardians to contact social services without it being over the telephone, rather than giving out individual email addresses. Then we could look at then how that would be managed and passed on. And, you know, we could put like a standard note on it where it's not a means of communicating for anything urgent. That, you know, that would be for the duty team then. So we're just looking at that at the moment, and hopefully that we'll get that set up soon, so it can provide some sort of support then for each of the departments within Children's Services. So I'll go on to my conclusion, and you know, if I go through the last paragraph. Services have continued to experience high levels of demand, reflecting the levels of disadvantage and the challenges we face by a significant number of families living in the county borough. The social service complaint will provide citizens with an essential, effective way of communicating their concerns so that levels of customer services can be increased and our services continue to improve. With the implementation of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, and the expectation of people we serve has increased, this will also be the context of continued austerity. We are therefore likely to continue to see an increase in complaints while services develop to meet the new level of expectation and austerity measures are absorbed. So to finalise, you know, we making a complaint as easy as possible. It's on the website. You know, those who want to speak in person, want to speak over the phone can. Though we give every form of communication way that we can to complainants, so nobody feels that there's a hurdle in front of them in order to express their concerns. And for myself, all I would do is encourage, you know, I've done a training session with Children's Services about the complaints process and the compliment process as well. And I'm going to do the same with adult services in order that, you know, we hear about these complaints. You know, complaint is not a negative. It's not, you know, it's not always something we've done wrong. It's something that that person feels that we've done wrong. And we should use it then as a tool to sort of improve possibly, or to look at why that person felt that they were at a point. It's sometimes their perception of how something's happened, and to turn that negative into a positive.
All right, again. Thank you very much. I'm going to echo mine. All right, members. I'll open up for questions first, and then we'll make the comments after. So any of the members for questions again, because we know it's the report we kicked out last year. We know what Gaynor just said now, because we're waiting for the annual report for this year. So, members, there. Can't hear you, Jack.
Thank you. Obviously, most councillors have probably dealt with people that have complained with social services, because it is an emotional time. and I understand that, and it is difficult for the staff as well. And communication is one of the biggest bugbears for people, because they want news every 5 minutes and that sort of thing. Obviously, that's not going to happen because the staff don't have the time either. But you know, you were saying that you're going to have dedicated emails for the different departments. When are these likely to be coming in, Gaynor?
Gain. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I've had initial discussions with Taryn Head that how we would set these up. I'm hoping in the very near future, as in the next couple of months. It's something me and Taryn, this was only a thought through really since we've been in lockdown. It's something that, you know, that my email address as being essential really, you know, because some people are working from home, some people are not in the office, might have issues with emails or and I just thought, so I spoke to Taryn literally about a month ago regarding this. So maybe, you know, for financial year 2021 for sure, where we were in 2021, 21-22.
If the different departments are going to have these dedicated emails, will they need funding for extra staff?
I don't think so. I think this is the bit that we need to sort of discuss. For example, I've got my own email address, Sarah in my office have, but we've got the joint one, and we always it takes a little bit of editing, but we use that one for all our forms of communication. So then that's where people respond back to, rather than our individual email addresses. So I don't believe that it would need any further staff. It would be for the staff within you know, those that are in the office, or those being, you know, me and Sarah manage ours quite well between us, and it's quite a busy email address. So I think it would be the staff within the departments would manage that themselves.
Okay, I think Taryn was coming here.
Yeah. Right there.
Well, I just thought it might be appropriate just to interject and give a little bit of an update really on what Gaynor was referring to. I think it's really important to say that we really acknowledge that this is a really delicate time for families engaging with children's services, and it isn't about right or wrong, it's about the way in which they experience the service that they access. What I would say is, in terms of this specific email addresses, it is scheduled for us to discuss as managers in our meeting in November to see how that could be implemented. I think there are potentially some barriers to overcome, but it's something that we're really committed to looking at. But obviously we just need to make sure that we just don't create a different kind of issue. So I think it needs to be really well thought through.
Thank you very much. Jack?
Bill, I've just got one more. I have. In 1819, there were 96 complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're split then between adult social services and children's social services.
Mm.
Do you find that you have the same complainants coming back year after year, or?
I probably there would be an handful of complainants that that are probably confident in submitting complaints. And so I think because they are confident in submitting complaints, whether previous complaints have been upheld or not, they are sort of you know, they are sort of confident that should they put the complaint in, that it will get responded to. You know, some complainants will be more apprehensive, but we have nobody on the vexatious register. Now, the vexatious register would be for somebody who's pursuing a complaint that has previously been addressed. So we have nobody on that register.
Okay, I just got a follow-up. Sorry, Bill.
I'll share when I come in.
You mentioned there that people would be apprehensive about making a complaint. Why would that be? And do you think people may have the perception that if they put in a complaint, it would harm their case?
There is that. This is what the complaints department are there for, to encourage and support and to reassure that making a complaint is not going to have a detrimental effect on there. You know, there would be, I think you probably find the apprehension more with the adult services, especially perhaps the older generation wouldn't say, oh, well, I don't want to get anybody into trouble. But I try and reassure each complainant that contacts me that, you know, thank you for your complaint. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to have a look at this, because I would far rather somebody contact the complaints department than either go and speak to friends and family about it, or go on social media and not give us the opportunity to have a look at that complaint for them. Something that might be quite straightforward. Yeah, something, you know, that might be quite simple to look at. You know, we wouldn't want people to be sitting at home, you know, festering over something that's happened when whether it's upheld or not, that's irrelevant. They should have a voice and they should have the opportunity to put those complaints in. So I do reassure anybody that is apprehensive or comes through reluctantly saying, well, I don't know whether this will have, especially perhaps with the children's services, they feel like it might have an impact on their case. Then I say, no, that's not what the complaints process is about. It's not illegal. I'm not in a legal arena. I'm in a complaints arena. So it's an expression of dissatisfaction. I think complaints can be quite a loaded word sometimes, you know, an expression of dissatisfaction can be anything.
Lovely. Thank you, Gaynor.
Okay, Shell.
Thank you. Just picking up on Declan's question there in terms of, you know, do people think that it affects their cases? And you give the example of children's services. So, you know, if it was a child protection case, for example, and a child got removed from medical and then they complained, am I right in thinking, though, that you would reject that complaint then until the legal proceedings of that case would be finished anyway? So you wouldn't have the two running in parallel, and that then puts a stop to the risks that you were talking about, Dec. Is that right, Gaynor?
Yes, yeah. I mean, the complaints process is certainly trumped by the legal process. Yeah. But what we find, the common thread sometimes is, although they've got this case going on in a legal arena, which I can't get involved in, there'll be, very rarely with complex complaints, there's just one complaint. There's usually like many prongs to it. So it could be that this is going on in the legal arena, but at the same time, the social worker is not ringing them back, or the social worker spoke to them in what they felt in a certain way. So what I would say is, although I can't look at that part of it, I'm more than happy to look at, the other element with regards to concerns about the social worker. This is why I make it clear to them, I don't work for social services. I'm not a social worker. I'm not social worker trained. I look at it quite impartially on, I think it's, I know it seems quite cliche, but it's from your own point of view, isn't it? If you wanted to make a complaint, you wouldn't want there to be a barrier up in front of you, even if there's something that somebody can't do. We will look at the elements that we can look at.
Fab, thank you.
Yeah, right.
Going back to, no, sorry, I've got a couple. Well,
you carry on.
What a surprise for me, eh? Going back to the email situation, I did pick that up as a query. I wrote it down because it's in the report as well on page 17, first paragraph, and you talk about the email situation to improve communication. So am I right in thinking that currently social workers and support workers wouldn't give out their work email to families that they're working with then, if this is, a common cause of a complaint? Is that the case at the moment?
I have had obviously Children's Services can answer this probably better than I can, but from my experience, when I've had a complainant, quite a persistent complainant, they've asked for an email address, I have been advised that they can't give out that email address.
Why is that? I'm
not sure. This is why I brought out then, well, can we have like a universal one that, but I have been advised, perhaps Taryn can advise me, can answer this one better, that they can't give out. I mean, I don't particularly give out my individual email address. I always give out to complainants the complaint email address. because that's
absolutely for complaints, that's the right process. But
Yeah.
I'm talking about for a social worker who's managing a case with
Karen
a
can answer this
family.
part for me, but this is why I
Yeah.
thought of this, because a complainant told me, and I rang a department and they said, no, we can't give the email address out. So I'm not sure.
Mark, can you answer that before we go any further?
Yeah, to my knowledge, there was an isolated incident with a new member of staff who didn't think that they could share their email address. That's now been clarified, and staff do frequently send out their emails. And previously I've received emails directly from people who access our service, so there is nothing departmentally that says that can't take place.
Fab. Okay. Maybe it's just a communication point then, Gaynor, that to encourage all of the workers, all of the team within adult and children's services to present their contact details at the initial assessments or initial meetings with families, so they've got a range of different ways that they can contact them, because you can clearly see that communication is a common thread in the complaints. So. And I get if they can't get hold by telephone, most people have got smartphones where they can, send an email and that. But yeah, that paragraph was a little bit concerning because, like Taryn said, I couldn't see any reason why staff wouldn't give out their email address for families that they case hold in.
I've been to, I can discuss this with Taryn when she has the the managers meetings to talk about the email, but I've had that experience on more than one occasion where they've said, due to the tone of emails that came in, they haven't been giving out their email address.
That's their cases, isn't it? So
yeah, whether they they give out the mobile number. It's certainly a concern. Communication is definitely a concern. Whether the good thing about having a universal email is if that person went on sick that morning, it's not sitting in her inbox, it's sitting in her or his inbox. Then it's going to go into a universal one where other members of staff can pick up on something. Because that's another, or if a staff member has left and hasn't told the parent that they've left, if they've left suddenly, then again, if the parents are encouraged to use the universal one, then I think that it's less likely that emails are going to get missed.
Okay, thank you. But Bill, I'm finished.
You carry on. I got 2 minutes speak out. Gentlemen,
Sorry.
I am forgotten about it.
I don't want to go on about this report because it is old now, isn't it? It's 1819, right? Yeah. So I think we've just got to accept what it is. I was certainly one going back to the comments around this coming to scrutiny last March to say that I didn't feel that it had enough information. It didn't have enough depth about understanding where the complaints were coming from, and more importantly, how we learn lessons from that to improve the service moving forward. But obviously this report shows that collectively between upheld and partially upheld we had 37, and that's really where the local authority has had to admit or acknowledge failings in processes, systems or communications, and that's really where I want the reports to drill into moving forward. So that's kind of what I would be looking for the one now for 1920 that hopefully we can have before the end of this year, because time is going on. It is to see it is good to see a balance, and I can see that on in the report. There's lots of examples of the compliments that's given on page 20, which is really good because the teams do a tremendous work. But it's all about, for us in Scrutiny, it's about that system, that process improvement, and we can't drive that unless we can really understand what the complaints are coming in. That's my comment.
Yeah, I can only apologise that the report from 1718 to 18 to 19 hasn't improved, but unfortunately the previous manager who presented the report, I wasn't informed.
No, I appreciate
what they were looking for. but by the time it was, I'd already started collating the stats for. But I'm hoping, you know, the report going forward then for 1920 will reassure that it's going to be more informative. We are looking at, you know, trends, which is important. You know, I mean, I don't think the complaint report is ever going to be used as a whipping stick against, you know, the departments. And I think perhaps maybe before we were just thinking, well, let's just adults and children's and put it into 2 sections. Obviously, the departments that I read out earlier, which have had the most complaints in children's services, it is the nature of the you know, of the work that they do. So it does. Some departments I don't have any, but then again, I also wonder, sometimes we don't have any complaints from any of the other departments, and I think, well, why? Because things must be going wrong, so why aren't we having complaints, you know? Because then sometimes that can be just as concerning as having complaints. At least, you know, within these departments that I've read out, they seem to encourage staff to encourage, you know, members of the public to say, well, if you remain unhappy, you can go through the complaint process.
Thank you.
All right, Gareth.
Yep.
Oh, is he about?
Yes, thank you, Bill.
Come on in.
Again, my question is around the stage 1 10 working days.
Right.
I see you recognise that you often or can go outside that 10 working days, and the reasons is given within the report, paragraph 6.2 and 7.2.
Yeah.
But have you an idea how many of the stage 1 goes outside the 10 working days?
How many? How many go to the 10 working days? I'd say probably, I haven't got the actual stats, but I'd say probably 98% of them do.
Yeah.
It would probably be that high.
Yeah.
We do have 10 working days is, although we will endeavour to respond within 10 working days if we can. If we can't, we will endeavour to write within 15 working days. So the actual Welsh Government guidelines is 15 working days. We offer 10 as that's the sort of initial guideline, 15 working days. But what we always state is if we are going to have a meeting to discuss that complaint further, then this is where we will inform the complainant that when the initial complaint comes in, although we do an acknowledgement of the actual concern, when we offer the meeting, we will say then that we will endeavour to respond within 15 working days of that meeting.
Yeah.
We also, as well, which is within Welsh Government guidelines, is because we do have up to 6 months, we are allowed to do extension letters. So if it's a particular complex case where the manager might need further time, we will send out an extension letter from the complaints department advising, because I think when you make a complaint, when you think of yourself making a complaint, all you want to know is something being done about it.
Yeah.
You know, it is better to do it right than to do it quickly.
Yeah, certainly.
So I think that, you know, as long as we keep that line of communication open between the complaints department and the complainant, saying, look, I don't want you to, you know, it's still being looked at. That's all sometimes a complainant actually wants, really.
Yeah. Bill, can I have a follow-up on...
You carry on, Grant.
Yeah. It's a typo, I think, in the report, just for the record, Gaynor, it is.
Oh,
no!
On
5.2.
I checked it 35 times.
I think paragraph 5.2, it should be 18-19, not 17-18.
Right, yeah, across the children.
Just for the record. For
future sorry. Well done. I thought I had picked up every typo. Yeah. Thank you very much for that.
And my final one then is regarding the independent investigator. Obviously, it's only gone on 2 matters in this report anyway. How was the independent investigator chosen?
Basically, on availability normally. They are the most limited line of work people out there. I say if anybody got social work experience and wants to retire, become an independent investigator. It's a common problem with all my my colleagues in neighbouring authorities. We constantly, we done a recruitment process about 3 years ago in RCT, where all the complaints officers got together and invited people who had retired to try and recruit them in to see how we could. Yeah. So the way I look at it is when I look at to appoint an independent investigator, first of all, we have a number that we use, but we all use. So first of all, you've got to check on availability. Yeah. So I can't pick somebody just off the top of the hat without checking with them first if they're available. And then going by really, depending on the complexity of the case, is looking how experienced they are, because we have had a few new independent people that we've used recently. But myself, I use them as independent persons, not independent investigators, because I listen to my colleagues in neighbouring authorities here and ask their sort of opinion really on somebody that they've used and how experienced they are. So I don't have no favourites. I don't use one more than the other. Yeah. I pick them based on their availability and their experience.
Yeah. Thanks, Gaynor.
Okay, Ian.
Yeah.
Ian.
Yeah, one general issue. You discussed the problems that you're having with numbers of complaints coming in, especially from the older person. From experience in health, which is where I worked previously, we changed the complaints to a concerns system. Right. You know, and I noticed in your the model procedure that is used now, it talks about concerns and complaints. People will more likely raise a concern because it's a bit more informal than a complaint. So I wondered if any idea could be given to, I know it's a huge change to suddenly change names and titles. There you get a better reflection from the public if you call it concerns.
Yeah. To be honest, the whole complaints process needs to be looked at. I mean, this hasn't really been touched since 2014 when we had the Welsh Government guidelines in. And we have new processes with the Ombudsman. They have new, and we've just recently had communication this week where they want us to put these new guidance process with the Ombudsman into our complaints process. So I think this is an opportunity now. It's a new way of working, and it's an opportunity now for us to completely review both the social services while staying within the guidelines, but reviewing both the social services and complaints process, corporate complaints process, in order that we can look at perhaps rewording certain areas. And I agree, I think concern is a far softer word, and I don't like the word complaint. I think complaint is quite a harsh word, and people automatically want to complain. But I mean, I try and say, well, you know, it's an expression of dissatisfaction, isn't it, really? But concern is like a softened version of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Cheryl.
Sorry, it was old.
Oh, fair enough. Right, any more questions? Okay, we're going to make comments now. One comment, a couple of comments. When is the SURE's annual report coming forward?
That'll be with you now within the next month.
Right. Also, I don't know if Lisa, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, you can be like Alice, man. What a fear, right?
Oh, I'm still here.
Can we have a look at a workshop for scrutiny members only to take this complaint forward? Because there's a lot of things want to be changing. A lot of things that you want to bring in. There's a lot of things again being discussed with Lisa. So members got, like Ian mentioned, change the word complaints. Can we have a workshop to discuss that just for scrutiny members?
Okay, so before we bring a report back to the formal scrutiny, do you want us to set up a meeting with all scrutiny members and Gaynor and myself and heads of service, and then we can look at exactly how you want to present it?
Yeah, social service scrutiny.
Okay. Yeah.
After that?
I'll sort that out, yeah.
Members are happy with that because we want to take it, well, we don't want to drag our feet again next year, doing the year after. We want to sort it out. And once we sort it out, it should be working okay.
Yeah.
Fingers
Okay,
crossed.
No problem.
And then, so we all before, what's it, November, December, is it? Christmas annual report, is it?
Yeah. I'll bring the mince pies.
You promised that last time.
I know, but like eating myself at home now, so it don't matter. To think,
I see now. Everybody happy? Any comments from members? No, again, can I say thank you very much? I do appreciate it. It's all new to you. And since last year, we've seen a lot of different things happening. I hope we can improve them and work closer together. Thank you very much. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the report now is Consultation of Day Services. Angela, you're about? Or Lisa, kick us off.
Yeah, Angela's about, but I'll just kick us off. So
Okay.
there's a report also coming to council for information only, just to give you sort of an outcome of the consultation that we promised we'd do at the start of the year. And again, because of the pandemic, things have been sort of delayed with regards to reports. This report is just sort of to reflect on sort of the last couple of months about where we are and where we want to be. And obviously for you to sort of give a view on about, you know, some of the changes that might be proposed. Obviously, because of the pandemic, there have been changes in day services, albeit on a temporary basis. Because of social distancing, we can't have as many numbers in as we did have. And obviously issues around transport and, you know, things like that. But obviously, we've had to offer support to many families because they've needed it. And, you know, it's progressed, I guess, as the lockdown is lifted. But again, it's something that's it's a living feast. We've got to look at it every day. And as the lockdown continues and, you know, numbers escalate, we may need to make changes again. So I'll hand over to Angela.
Thanks. If you see from the report, what you'll see is we've put a background in to say where day services were. Our plan has always been to review our position in terms of day services and see how we can improve the offer to the people who access them. The predominant client group within day services are people who learn disabilities and physical disabilities, and those older people, and the majority of people who access our day services at this time tend to be people with dementia and those that are socially isolated. There's a couple of people that we actually commission bespoke day services for. Those are people with very specialist needs and access to National Autistic Society services and partnerships of care. So there's only a very small number of people who actually go outside the local authority for day services. We've got a breakdown in 3.6 that indicates, you know, the number of people who would normally have been accessing our day services in Merthyr. So you can see there we've got Unit 1 is in the Health Park, Tigwyn Newydd is the Salvation Army behind the Civic Centre, the greenhouses are sited at Cyfarthfa Park. Ticum is based within the extra care facility and Unit 2 is in the health park. Where were we? Our current day service configuration has been like this for a significant period of time. Last time there was a major change to day services was during the closure of the old Sandbrook day service, where we moved up to the health park, and that was, you know, a significant number of years ago now. And we recognise now that we need to realign our day services in line with the changing and meeting people's individual well-being outcomes. And we look at these in separate ways. Where we are now, we started some work in order to enhance our day services. That includes utilising the Integrated Care Fund capital monies, both to look at reconfiguring the current day service of Unit 2 for people with dementia. They're sited up in the health park and there's a joint provision. And we commissioned Meaningful Care Matters, though many of you may be more familiar with Dementia Care Matters. as the name, but they did actually change it in the last year. As part of that, we've looked at reconfiguring the internal space to make it more conducive to people with dementia and adopting the meaningful care matters, ideology and model of care. That is currently in process and due to be completed by the end of the year. But the feedback we've had to date is that's well on its way and, you know, it's progressing really well at this time. We've referenced in you around the public consultation, as Lisa said earlier. We went out to that as part of the efficiency programmes at the beginning of the year. We didn't actually manage to get that back to council because it would have been due to go in April, at which time then we were sidetracked by needing to respond to the COVID pandemic. We've commenced some other areas of redesign and looking at the model of care within the dementia care unit, and we've done work with people with learning disabilities and looking at what their priorities would be as part of the regional commission statement of commission's intent for people who learn disabilities. We needed to close day service in March 2020. Part of that decision was due to us being unable to maintain social distancing in line with government guidance. But a lot of the people who access day services already made a decision to withdraw from day services for fear of mixing with others, and self-isolated as part of their shielding arrangement, because many people who access day services also have comorbidities and are unwell, so they were at higher risk. In June, we looked at how could we start to reopen day services, recognising the impact on the people who use our services and carers. And so we did a piece of work to look at how could we offer any day services, but make sure that they could be delivered safely and within the current guidance in terms of managing COVID. You'll see from the table in 5.9 that the differences in number of opportunities we could provide people. So, for instance, in Unit 1, prior to COVID, we were able to offer places for 16 to 17 people a day, dependent on their needs. And post-COVID, the maximum we could accommodate in there was 7. And then the decreased numbers during the week. So those people who were having 5 days, we were no longer able to offer. But we've looked at it. Risk assessment. So day services staff during COVID have continued to maintain contact with all the people who use day services or their relatives where they're unable to communicate themselves. And as part of reopening day services, we looked at everybody who was accessing it. And the information was being received from day services staff who were making contact and the care managers to risk assess who were those people who were most at risk, and we prioritise them to return to day services. But as you can see, our numbers were significantly reduced as part of this. In terms of commission services, we haven't really had any of the commission services reopening. One has started to open for 2 days a week, but that's only been in the last 5 or 6 weeks. And, you know, it is, you know, quite difficult to have any say over them opening. And again, they're in the same position of ensuring that they are able to deliver services safely in this new pandemic environment. We've said that the predicted date for the completion of the works in Kehardie is March next year, and we temporarily relocated the people who access our service to the Guest Keen on an interim basis, as our initial plan was to move to Fleecefine, but there's been a delay in moving from Fleecefine up to the new unit up in Tigurnos, again delayed by staff. The building staff being unable to work during the COVID period. Where do we want to be? We were committed to modernising our day services and looking at opportunities to strengthen the way we meet individual wellbeing outcomes. One of the things we've started doing is complete the review of day services, informing the creation of the day opportunity strategy. Part of that, I think we're probably mainly on the way in terms of older people. However, we need to confirm that in a strategic direction rather than in just the direction of travel for people with dementia. We want to fully implement the work of Meaningful Care Matters, and work is continuing with both our health colleagues and our day services staff to adopt our model, which will be much better to implement when we have the revised building arrangements up in the health park. We're also looking at alternative options for lower level day to service opportunities, exploring, looking at people to look at work opportunities. That's in line with the LD statement of commission and intent, which is based on feedback from people who use services, and they've seen one of their priorities as work. So a lot of people with learning disabilities rather be in an employment arena rather than a day services arena. We're looking to enhance the provision of daily living skills to enable people to maintain their independence. So, when they are using daytime opportunities, taking that as an opportunity to improve their independence skills. And we are currently looking to work with health colleagues to explore the possibility of enhancing the day service environment in Unit 1 for learning disability clients. What we plan to do next is consult on the daytime opportunity strategy. We've almost completed drafting there. It's more difficult to do that co-productively in our current sort of position because we have undertaken some meetings with People First. However, it's far more difficult to engage with people with learning disabilities on remote access formats. We want to implement the results of the consultation. That'll be based on the decision by Cabinet and Council. And so we'll take that decision once that's been reported upon and ensure a robust interim arrangement for day Unit 2 service while the build works at Kihardy Health Park are completed. We anticipated, again, as Lisa was saying earlier, it's like building on shifting sand at the moment, with a clear plan that whilst the work was being done, the people from Cleesfine would move to Tigurnos, and then we would utilise Cleesfine as an interim day service whilst the work was being undertaken. But we had to progress it because otherwise we would have lost the funding because it was over a set period of time. And we need to consider where the new ALN requirements fit with our college provision for people with learning disability, because there could be an opportunity there to enhance life skills training as part of that new development. We've considered and included some indicative timescales, but in all honesty, our timescales seem to be moving, considerably all the time, when we have to revisit on every occasion when we need to step back into reactive mode to respond to the pandemic. They contribute to the wellbeing objectives, people, and those are outlined in section 8. Any questions?
Well, the chair would just ask any questions. Any questions for Angela? Any questions, Henry? Can you hear me? No?
No questions from me.
Hey! Any questions? Angela, I'm going to say is, all the comments you made, we all going to me at the present moment.
Well, I go on.
Yeah, but then I got it's
All
with
right.
us. It's the virus that's causing major problems. And that's the problem we got. Everything's happening around that. So I don't know how we get there. Gareth?
Hi, Angela. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, guys.
Yeah. That's all right. I lost my report now. Bear with me a second. It's really regarding the consultation that took place earlier this year.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why it hasn't come to scrutiny, but it's going to council tomorrow night as an information report.
I'm not sure where Lisa can probably answer that, because he went to CMT and why, and I think and cabinet, so the decision was made there. We needed to get something together, so I think it's probably around the timing as well.
Gareth,
Lisa,
the
you be able to answer?
coming directly to council is because that was what was requested at when the initial report came through back in, I think it was January or February, might even been sooner than that, when we were looking at the savings. It was agreed that all the consultations would come back to council and not scrutiny. So we had the day services restructure on the scrutiny agenda, which is why we've brought this report today. So it was sort of, I suppose you were having that information through this report, but we were asked to take the consultation outcome back to council. Because of the delay and because of COVID, we've put it as an information report for now, because it's difficult for you as councillors to make a decision at this present time, because obviously we can't implement any of the consultation outcomes, because, you know, we've been in a situation where we're just trying to balance risk over the last 6 months. So that was why that happened.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, Angela. One further question is on paragraph 512, I think it was, of the report. Any reason why the other, obviously we're in a different situation perhaps when the report was prepared because of the lockdown, local lockdown, but why haven't the other organisations started to be up and running?
I think the difficulty they've got is some of the other day services, commissioned day services, is again, they're in the same position as we are in terms of how can they support people in their current configuration and the buildings. So if you look at it, you know, it's designed that people can move, all the day services designed that people can move around freely. Then you have to consider that most of the people who go to the more specialist units are those with the higher care needs and more likely to be wandering. So then, you know, they have to consider how they can deliver that service and ensure that they're not putting those people at risk.
Yeah.
So they haven't given us any details. What they've provided us with is updates indicating that at this point they're unable to reopen day services at the same capacity, pretty much the same as we are. And in all honesty, across Wales, I don't think a lot of day services have reopened. In some, they closed down in some of the authorities and they haven't started reopening them. So I think we were one of the first ones to start reopening and offering the daytime opportunity.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Sorry, all right?
Yeah, thanks.
Jack?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. I know there was 1,355 people answered a survey, with just short, about 72% of people were against the proposals. Just to confirm that any suggested changes to the service will actually go to full council. That is correct, isn't it?
Anybody answer that question?
It's my understanding that what we agreed was we would provide feedback from the consultation. So we're in quite a different. You can hear me. So,
yep.
Can you hear me? Yeah, that was. You can hear me. It's like, can you hear me? What we didn't want to do, we were more or less ready. We felt that it wasn't sufficient just to do a public consultation without focusing on the client group that used this service. So in addition to the public consultation, we set up meetings with families. We brought in People's First to get feedback from to support the service users with learning disabilities to ensure that their views were incorporated in there. So at this point, we haven't implemented any of the options that we put forward as part of the efficiency programme. And bearing in mind at this point, our position has changed considerably because we've had to reduce the capacity within day services in light of the pandemic. So our position now, and one of the options was about reducing the number of days or the number of hours that we deliver daytime activities. By default, we've had to do that just to accommodate everyone at the moment.
But those changes in hours, just say everything goes back to normal in 6 months' time, those hours will go back up?
We haven't had agreement from council or cabinet to reduce or make any changes. So was the only decision that was made was that we undertake further consultation in terms of the proposals, and that's what we've done. So we haven't actually amended anything in line with the efficiency programme. Any amendments have only been purely in response to enable us to restart the service in line with the reduced capacity for COVID.
Yeah. I see the cabinet member has his hand up. I was going to ask him just to confirm. So if Chris Davis wants to come in.
Is that okay, Councillor Smith?
Yes, Chris.
Okay, I think there's a couple of pieces of almost a jigsaw puzzle that I think it's probably useful to put together, because obviously we've got this report that Angela and Lowry have brought together today, which is obviously setting out, where we are with day services and some ideas about transformation, and obviously developing a day opportunities strategy. So I think that's one thing that's on the agenda for Scrutiny Committee to think about, and obviously question and give their thoughts on today. I think the second thing, Councillor Salmon and committee members, is obviously the information report that's come into council tomorrow evening, and that's in relation obviously to the consultation that was undertaken alongside a few other consultations like the Cashless Council and the Mayor's Office. Now, Lisa and I and Angela felt that needed to come forward to council for information, because we did wider consultation, as Angela's indicated, with service users and families, and informal consultation with our staff. Obviously, Care Inspectorate Wales are due to come and inspect the parts of the authority over the coming weeks and months, and obviously the Assurance Board. So we felt it was important for council to get that report tomorrow night for information. And I think the third bit of it all really is the work that's currently ongoing in terms of the preparations for budgets, savings, efficiencies, in order for council to be able to set a balanced budget come next year. So I think the three pieces of, or three pillars of a jigsaw puzzle that all come together. I think moving forward, whatever we decide to do, we would want to engage you as a scrutiny committee. There'll be a role for cabinet to play. There'll be a role for officers and corporate management team, a role for cabinet and a role for council. I think we'll clarify with Caris as the council's senior solicitor about in which order we bring those forward, but reassure you, Councillor Smith and committee members, we want to engage with you as we take all of this forward. I hope that helps and responds to Councillor Salmon's question.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair.
Can I say, Chris, as a scrutiny committee, we won't be asking, we'll be demanding, right? Because at the end of the day, the buck stops with us as well, mind you. So, we'll be asking more important questions, because the way Angela said it, we can't take us any forward until we finish all the building work. That's the main block to do it, and then we start working out there. But I want a lot more information back, because you can only prioritize some of these clients the way you're doing it. But what happens if prioritize the same people and the people left behind? So where do we work from that? So this is a bigger picture than people think.
Councillor Smith, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely spot on. I think, certainly Lowry, who's leading on this piece of work around day service, we see you in terms of doing this in a co-produced way, i.e. doing this together, scrutiny being a really important part of that, along with our staff, our service users and our families. So we most certainly will want to do this with you, and obviously we'll just be clear about how we just take that process forward together. But anything we do, we certainly will look to bring forward to you for your views, for your recommendations for us to take forward.
Any more? Ange, anything more?
I'd just like to comment, Councillor Smith, is we would want to be in a clearer position than we are now. We would have, you know, if everything had gone to plan, we would have been using the work at the health park would have been completed by now. Everything has been delayed. We're trying to ensure that we're still progressing and moving forward in terms of the developments, but still having to deal reactively to our current position. So, you know, from a service point of view, we're still trying to improve the outcomes and the offer to people who are accessing our data our opportunities.
Thank you much. Any comments from members? Everybody happy with the report? Ange, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Okay. So we go back to the agenda now and it's the forward work programme. Everybody happy with that? We're going to fit in that workshop as we discussed, and perhaps we might be looking for not only one, other ones coming down the line for us to know what's happening. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Number 6, scrutiny referrals, feedback, I've had none. Reflection, evaluation of the meeting. Everybody happy with the meeting the way it went?
Yes, thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Chair.
Everybody
Thank you,
happy?
Yes,
No
thanks.
problem. And that's the end of me, so I would say thank you very much, appreciate it.